shadows in the attic. Eleanor Thompson had always prided herself on her ability to maintain appearances. At 68, with silver hair neatly pinned and a wardrobe of crisp blouses and pearl necklaces, she was the epitome of a gracious hostess. Her Victorian home in the quiet suburb of Willow Creek stood as a testament to her life's work. A sprawling 3-story relic filled with antique furniture, faded photographs, and secrets buried deeper than the roots of the ancient oak in the backyard. That oak had been there when she married her late husband, Robert, and it had watched silently as their family grew and fractured. The idea for the family gathering had come to her in a moment of quiet desperation. It had been years since the house felt alive with voices and laughter. Her daughter, Amelia, lived across the country in Seattle, buried in her career as a software engineer and rarely visited. Her grandson, little Tommy, was 7 now, and Eleanor barely knew him beyond the occasional video call. But Michael, her youngest son, was different. Michael was the anchor, the one who still called every Sunday, who sent flowers on her birthday. He and his wife, Sarah, lived just an hour away, and they were the ones she could count on to fill the empty rooms with a semblance of normalcy. "I just want everyone together one last time," Eleanor had told Michael over the phone, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Before the holidays get too busy." Michael had agreed enthusiastically, as he always did. "Of course, Mom. Sarah and I will be there. I'll see if Amelia can fly in with Tommy. It'll be great." And so, on that crisp autumn Saturday, Eleanor prepared. She spent the morning in the kitchen, the air thick with the scent of apple pie baking and a slow-roasted ham glazing in the oven. She polished the mahogany dining table until it gleamed, set out the fine china that had been a wedding gift from Robert's parents, and arranged fresh chrysanthemums in crystal vases. Everything had to be perfect, because perfection was her shield, her way of keeping the cracks from showing. They arrived in waves. First, Michael and Sarah at 4 p.m. sharp. Michael, tall and broad-shouldered like his father, carried a box of artisanal chocolates and a bottle of aged scotch. Sarah, with her warm brown eyes and cascading auburn hair, hugged Eleanor tightly, her floral perfume wrapping around them like a gentle fog. "The house looks beautiful, as always," Sarah said, her smile genuine but somehow too bright, too rehearsed. Eleanor had never fully warmed to Sarah. She was kind, yes, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity in her gaze, as if she were always searching for something unspoken. Amelia showed up an hour later, harried from the airport with Tommy in tow. Amelia was the spitting image of Eleanor in her youth, sharp features, no-nonsense bob haircut, and a perpetual air of impatience. "Traffic was a nightmare," she grumbled, setting down her suitcase. Tommy, shy and wide-eyed, clung to her leg, staring up at the high ceilings as if the house were a castle from one of his storybooks. The afternoon unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. They gathered in the living room, where a fire crackled in the hearth. Tommy played with an old set of wooden trains Eleanor had pulled from the attic, while the adults sipped tea and caught up. Amelia talked about her latest promotion, Michael shared stories from his law firm, and Sarah listened attentively, interjecting with thoughtful questions. Eleanor moved among them like a ghost, refilling cups and offering smiles, all while feeling the weight of the house pressing down on her. Dinner was served at 6:30. The ham was succulent, the mashed potatoes creamy, the green beans al dente. Conversation flowed easily, politics carefully skirted, the latest movies, Tommy's school adventures. But as the plates were cleared and Eleanor brought out the pie, she noticed something shift. Michael leaned close to Sarah, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered. Eleanor couldn't hear the words, but she saw Sarah's expression change, a flicker of surprise, then a slow nod. Her eyes darted toward the grand staircase that led to the upper floors. "Excuse me for a moment," Sarah said, pushing back her chair with a polite smile. "I need to freshen up." She headed not to the powder room off the kitchen, but up the stairs, her heels clicking softly on the polished wood. Eleanor watched her go, a knot forming in her stomach. The others didn't seem to notice. Amelia was regaling Michael with a story about a buggy software launch, and Tommy was doodling on a napkin. But Eleanor's mind raced. What had Michael said? Why upstairs? She tried to distract herself, serving slices of pie and pouring coffee. Michael ate heartily, complimenting the crust. Amelia checked her phone intermittently, ever the workaholic. Tommy yawned, his eyelids drooping. But Alina's ears strained for sounds from above. She heard the creak of floorboards, the faint thud of a door opening. The second floor held the bedrooms, hers, the guest rooms, and the one that had once been the nursery. But beyond that, up a narrower set of stairs was the attic, dusty, forgotten, locked away. Minutes ticked by, 10, 20, 30. Sarah's absence stretched like a shadow. Alina excused herself to check on the dessert wine and slipped upstairs. Her heart hammered as she ascended, each step a reminder of her age, her frailty. The hallway was dim, lit only by a sconce at the far end. She paused outside her bedroom door. It was closed, untouched. But further down the attic door, it was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. She crept closer, her breath shallow. Inside, she heard rustling, papers shuffling, boxes shifting. A soft gasp. Alina froze, her hand on the banister. She knew what was up there, old trunks filled with Robert's belongings, yellowed letters, photographs from a life before this one, and something else. Something she'd hidden even from herself for decades. Flashbacks flooded her mind. 42 years ago, when she was young and reckless, before Robert, there had been another man, David. A brief affair, a mistake born of loneliness during Robert's long business trips. She'd ended it quickly, but not before discovering she was pregnant. Robert had been thrilled, assuming the child was his. They named her Amelia. But Alina had always wondered. Amelia's eyes were David's shade of hazel, not Robert's blue. And then, 2 years later, Michael arrived, unmistakably Robert's son. She'd buried the truth in that attic. A single letter from David, confirming the paternity, tucked into an old jewelry box. She'd meant to destroy it, but sentiment, or guilt, had stayed her hand. If Sarah found it. Alina retreated downstairs before she could be discovered, her legs unsteady. Back at the table, Michael was laughing at one of Tommy's jokes. Amelia was helping the boy with his pie. No one mentioned Sarah's prolonged absence. Finally, after 45 minutes, Sarah descended. Her face was ashen, her hands trembling as she gripped the railing. She crossed to Michael, leaning down to whisper in his ear. "Darling, you need to come up. There's something you have to see." Her voice cracked, barely audible. Michael's smile faltered. He glanced at Alina, then nodded. "Everything okay?" he asked Sarah, but she just shook her head, eyes wide with unspoken horror. Alina felt the world tilt. "Sarah, dear, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Sarah forced a weak smile. "I'm fine, just a bit of a headache. Michael, please." He rose, excusing himself, and followed her upstairs. Amelia raised an eyebrow. "What's that about?" Alina shrugged, her mouth dry. Who knows? Maybe she found an old photo album or something. But inside, panic clawed at her. Tommy, sensing the tension, whined softly. Amelia distracted him with a game on her phone. Upstairs, Alina imagined the scene. Michael opening the attic door, Sarah pointing to the open trunk, the letter in her hand. "I was looking for the bathroom," Sarah might say, "but I got curious. The door was unlocked, and I found this." Michael would read it, his face crumpling. The words, "The child is mine if you ever need anything." Signed, David. What would he say? Would he confront her? Disown her? The perfect family she'd curated, Michael the golden child, Amelia the distant achiever, would shatter. Minutes dragged into an eternity. Amelia grew restless. Should I go check on them? No, Alina snapped, sharper than intended. Let them be. Finally, footsteps on the stairs. Michael and Sarah returned, but they weren't alone in their expressions. Michael's jaw was set, his eyes red-rimmed. Sarah clung to his arm, her pallor unchanged. "Mom," Michael said, his voice steady but laced with steel. "We need to talk, all of us." Alina's heart sank. Amelia looked up, confused. Tommy stared wide-eyed. They gathered in the living room. Sarah held the letter, yellowed and fragile. "I didn't mean to snoop," she began, her voice trembling. "Michael asked me to look for something, old family records," he said, "for a genealogy project he's doing at work, but I found this instead." Michael nodded. "I whispered to her during dinner. I thought it would be harmless. A fun surprise for everyone." Alina felt the room spin. "I can explain." But Amelia interrupted, snatching the letter. She read it quickly, her face draining of color. Mom, is this about me? Eleanor nodded, tears welling. It was a mistake. Long ago, your father, Robert, never knew. I thought it was better that way. Amelia stood abruptly. Better? You let me believe a lie my whole life. And Michael, did you favor him because he was really yours? No, Eleanor protested. I loved you both. But yes, I was harder on you. I was afraid. Afraid the truth would show. The room erupted. Amelia paced, furious. All those times you pushed me away, sent me to boarding school while Michael got to stay home. It makes sense now. Michael, ever the peacemaker, tried to intervene. Amelia, let's not. No, Michael, you've always been the favorite, the one she trusted. And now I know why. Sarah, surprisingly, spoke up. This doesn't change who we are. Family is more than blood. But her words fell flat. Tommy began to cry, overwhelmed. Amelia scooped him up. We're leaving. I need time to process this. She stormed out, slamming the door. Michael turned to Eleanor, his expression a mix of betrayal and pity. Mom, why didn't you tell us? I was ashamed, Eleanor whispered. I wanted to protect you, protect the family. Sarah placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. We can work through this, but it starts with honesty. The evening unraveled from there. Michael and Sarah stayed to talk, but the air was thick with unspoken accusations. Eleanor confessed everything, the affair, the doubt, the years of selective affection. Michael listened, his face hardening. I love you, Mom, but this, it's a lot. They left late that night, promising to call soon. The house fell silent, emptier than before. Eleanor sat alone in the living room, staring at the dying fire. The perfect family had been an illusion, one she'd built on lies. Now, exposed, she wondered if they could rebuild, or if the shadows in the attic had claimed them all. In the weeks that followed, healing began slowly. Amelia called after a few days, angry but willing to talk. Therapy sessions were scheduled. Michael visited often, bridging the gap. Sarah, with her easy smiles, became the unexpected mediator, organizing family dinners where truths were shared like the meals themselves. Eleanor learned that control was an illusion, but love, real, flawed love, could endure. The big house, once a prison of secrets, became a space for reconciliation. And as winter set in with snow blanketing the oak outside, Eleanor felt, for the first time in years, a glimmer of true peace. Shadows of the forgotten. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns hid the cracks in perfect families, Eleanor Hayes lived a life of meticulously crafted illusions. At 68, she was the epitome of grace. A retired schoolteacher with silver hair pinned in a neat bun, always dressed in pastel cardigans and pearl earrings. Her home was a 2-story colonial, filled with the scent of fresh-baked cookies and the soft hum of classical music from her antique radio. Her daughter, Sophie, often joked that Eleanor's house was like a museum, everything in its place, no dust, no secrets. But secrets, like shadows, have a way of lengthening in the evening light. It started on a crisp autumn afternoon in October. Sophie, 35 and a successful architect, had driven over with her husband, Marcus, and their 2 young children, Lily and Max. They were there for a family dinner, one of Eleanor's famous pot roasts, complete with mashed potatoes and green beans from her garden. Sophie had been complaining about the clutter in her own home, especially the attic, which was overflowing with old toys and forgotten heirlooms. Mom, you have to teach me your ways, Sophie said, laughing as she helped set the table. Our house is a disaster zone. I swear, if I don't declutter soon, Marcus is going to divorce me. Marcus, a tall man with a kind smile and a beard that made him look like a professor, chuckled from the living room where he was playing blocks with the kids. It's true. Last week, I tripped over a box of old baby clothes and nearly broke my neck. Eleanor smiled warmly, stirring the gravy on the stove. Organization is key, dear. Everything has its place. Speaking of which, I have some old photo albums in the attic that might interest you. Family history and all that. The conversation flowed easily through dinner, filled with stories of the kids' school adventures and Marcus's latest project at the engineering firm. But as the evening wore on, Sophie mentioned needing a few extra blankets for the guest room back home. Their heater was on the fritz. Mom, Do you still have those quilts you made years ago? The ones with the floral patterns?" Alina paused, her fork midway to her mouth. The quilts were stored in the attic, tucked away behind boxes she hadn't touched in decades. "Of course, sweetheart, they're up there, but it's a bit dusty. Maybe Marcus can go up and grab them, he's taller." Marcus waved it off. "No problem at all, just point me in the right direction." But Sophie insisted. "I'll do it. I need to stretch my legs after that meal anyway." She kissed Marcus on the cheek and headed upstairs, her footsteps echoing on the wooden stairs. Alina watched her go, a faint unease stirring in her chest. She glanced at the grandfather clock in the hall, 6:47 p.m. The attic was accessible through a pull-down ladder in the upstairs hallway, right outside her bedroom. Sophie would be up there for a few minutes at most. Alina busied herself clearing the plates, chatting with Marcus about the upcoming holidays, but her eyes kept flicking to the clock. 6:50, 6:55, 7:00. What was taking so long? At 7:12, Sophie reappeared at the top of the stairs, but she wasn't carrying quilts. Her face was pale, her usually bright blue eyes wide and unfocused. She descended slowly, one hand gripping the banister as if for support. In her other hand, she clutched a faded shoebox, its lid askew, spilling yellowed papers and photographs onto the steps behind her. Alina's heart skipped. No, not that. "Mom," Sophie said, her voice barely above a whisper as she reached the bottom. She didn't look at Alina. Instead, she turned to Marcus, who had stood up from the couch, sensing something was wrong. The kids, oblivious, continued playing in the corner. Marcus approached, frowning. "Soph, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Sophie thrust the box toward him. "Look at this, just look." Alina remained in the kitchen doorway, her hands twisting a dish towel into knots. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her throat was dry, the words evaporating like mist. Marcus took the box and pulled out a stack of documents, old hospital records, birth certificates, and a bundle of letters tied with a frayed ribbon. His brow furrowed as he scanned the top one. "This is a birth certificate for a baby named Amelia Hayes, born 40 years ago." He looked up at Sophie, then at Alina. "Who's Amelia?" Sophie finally met her mother's eyes, and in that gaze, Alina saw the fracture, a chasm opening between them. "Mom, tell me this is some kind of mistake. Tell me you didn't." The room fell silent except for the ticking clock. Lily and Max, sensing the tension, stopped their game and huddled closer to Marcus. Alina sank into a chair at the dining table, her legs giving way. "Amelia, she was your sister, Sophie, your older sister." Sophie's face crumpled. "Sister, what are you talking about? You've always said I was your only child. Dad said the same before he passed. No aunts, no uncles, no siblings, just us." Marcus, still rifling through the papers, pulled out a photograph, a grainy black and white image of a toddler with curly hair, sitting on a woman's lap. The woman was a younger Alina, her smile forced, her eyes distant. On the back in faded ink, "Amelia, age 2, 1985. I had to," Alina whispered, her voice trembling. "She wasn't like you, she was difficult." Sophie knelt down, picking up the scattered letters from the stairs. She opened one, her hands shaking. "Dear Mommy," she read aloud, her voice cracking. "I miss you. The nurses are nice, but I want to come home. Why can't I? Love, Amelia." The date was 1987. Marcus's face hardened. "An institution. You put a child in an institution." Alina nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "She was born with challenges, developmental delays, they called it back then. Autism, maybe, or something else. The doctors weren't sure in those days. She didn't speak until she was 4. She had meltdowns, screaming fits that lasted hours. Your father and I, we were young, overwhelmed. We had you on the way, Sophie. We thought it was best for everyone." "Best," Sophie echoed, standing up abruptly. "You abandoned her. These letters, there are dozens. She wrote to you for years, begging to come home, and you never responded." Alina buried her face in her hands. "We visited at first, but it was so hard, seeing her there in that cold place with other children like her. Your father couldn't handle it, he started drinking more. And then when you were born, perfect and healthy, we just moved on. We told ourselves she was better off with professionals. Marcus set the box on the table and pulled out more documents, transfer papers, medical evaluations. It says here she was diagnosed with mild intellectual disability and anxiety. Nothing about being violent or unmanageable. Therapy recommendations. Family counseling, but you just left her. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Sophie paced the room, her breath coming in short gasps. Where is she now, Mom? Is she still alive? Did you even check? Eleanor hesitated, the weight of 40 years pressing down. The last I heard. She was transferred to a group home in Riverside, about an hour away. That was 20 years ago. I stopped getting updates after your father died. It was too painful. Too painful for you, Sophie spat, her voice rising. What about her? Imagine being a little girl, wondering why your parents never came back, wondering what you did wrong. Marcus gathered the kids, who were now whimpering, and took them to the backyard to play, giving the women space. When he returned, his expression was resolute. We need to find her, Sophie. If she's out there, she deserves to know her family, her real family. Eleanor looked up, panic flashing in her eyes. No, please, it's been too long. What if she's happy? What if dredging this up ruins everything? Sophie stopped packing and knelt in front of her mother, taking Eleanor's hands in hers. They were cold, trembling. Mom, this isn't about you anymore. It's about Amelia. And me, I have a sister. A sister I never knew because you decided to erase her from our lives. How could you do that? How could you live with it? The confession poured out then, like a dam breaking. Eleanor spoke of the shame in the 1980s when disabilities were whispered about, not embraced. Of the pressure from her own parents to fix things, to have a normal family. Of the nights she cried herself to sleep, reading Amelia's letters before hiding them away. I thought I was protecting you, she sobbed. I wanted you to have opportunities, not be weighed down by all that. Sophie pulled away, wiping her eyes. Weighed down? Family isn't a burden, Mom, it's everything. That night, they didn't leave. Marcus put the kids to bed in the guest room, and the three adults sat in the living room, sifting through the box until dawn. More photos emerged. Amelia as a baby, swaddled in pink. Amelia at 5, finger painting in the institution's art room. A teenage Amelia, awkward and smiling shyly at the camera during a rare visit. By morning, Sophie had made a decision. We're going to find her, she declared, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. Today. Eleanor protested weakly, but deep down, she knew it was inevitable. The drive to Riverside was tense, the car filled with unspoken accusations and fragile hope. The group home was a modest building, surrounded by gardens and wheelchairs on the porch. A kind administrator, Ms. Rivera, greeted them. Amelia Hayes, oh yes, she's been with us for years. She's 42 now. Works part-time at the local library shelving books. Loves puzzles and gardening. Eleanor's heart pounded as they were led to a sunny common room. There she was, Amelia, sitting by a window, piecing together a jigsaw of a mountain landscape. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face lined but soft, with the same blue eyes as Sophie's. Amelia, Ms. Rivera said gently, you have visitors. Amelia looked up, confusion flickering across her features. Then recognition dawned as she saw Eleanor. Mommy, she whispered, the word childlike, heartbreaking. Eleanor collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Sophie approached slowly, tears in her own eyes. Hi, Amelia, I'm Sophie, I'm your sister. Amelia's face lit up with a tentative smile. Sister, I always wanted a sister. The reunion was messy, filled with apologies, explanations, and awkward silences. Amelia spoke haltingly, sharing fragments of her life. The loneliness of the early years, the friends she'd made, the small joys she'd found. She didn't harbor anger, perhaps she couldn't, or perhaps time had softened the edges. But the pain was there, etched in her quiet demeanor. In the weeks that followed, the family began to heal. Sophie visited Amelia regularly, bringing Lily and Max to play. Marcus helped set up a room in their home for weekend stays. Eleanor, racked with guilt, started therapy, confronting the choices she'd made. It wasn't easy, trust had been shattered, bonds strained, but slowly, piece by piece, like Amelia's puzzles, they rebuilt. Eleanor learned that secrets don't bury the past, they poisoned the present. And in the end, family wasn't about perfection. It was about facing the shadows together, no matter how long they'd been hidden. Shadows of the forgotten. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns hid the fractures of ordinary lives, lived Margaret Hayes, a widow of 68 whose days were filled with the mundane rituals of retirement, tending her rose garden, attending church socials, and hosting her daughter Sarah for Sunday dinners. Margaret had always projected an image of quiet grace, a woman who had raised her family with unwavering devotion after her husband Robert's death from a heart attack 20 years ago. But beneath that facade lay a secret that had festered like an untreated wound, one that threatened to unravel everything when it finally burst open. It started on a crisp autumn afternoon in 2025. Sarah, now 45 and a successful lawyer married to her high school sweetheart, Tom, had come over to help Margaret sort through the attic. The old Victorian house was cluttered with decades of accumulated belongings, and Sarah insisted it was time to declutter. "Mom, you can't keep everything forever," Sarah had said with a laugh, pulling down dusty boxes labeled with faded marker scribbles. They were knee-deep in old photo albums and forgotten holiday decorations when Sarah unearthed a locked metal trunk tucked behind a stack of yellowed newspapers. "What's this, Mom?" she asked, wiping away cobwebs. Margaret froze, her face draining of color. "Oh, that's nothing. Just some old junk from your father's side of the family. Let's leave it be." But Sarah, ever the persistent one, jiggled the lock. It was rusted and gave way easily. Inside were stacks of envelopes, yellowed with age, tied in bundles with twine. The addresses were all the same. To Margaret Hayes from Pine Ridge Residential Center. Sarah pulled one out, her brow furrowing. "Pine Ridge, isn't that some kind of facility for people with disabilities?" Margaret snatched the letter back, her hands trembling. "Sarah, please put it away." But it was too late. Sarah had already opened one. The handwriting was looping and careful, like that of someone who had taken great pains to form each word. "Dear Mom, it's been another year. The doctors say I'm doing better with my therapy. I miss you and Dad. Do you think I could come home for Christmas? Love, Daniel." Sarah's eyes widened. "Daniel? Who is Daniel, Mom?" She rifled through more letters, dates spanning from the 1980s to the early 2000s. Drawings accompanied some simple sketches of birds, mountains, a family holding hands. "Mom, what is this? You have a son." "Another son." Margaret sank to the floor, her back against the wall. The attic felt suffocating, the air thick with dust and regret. He was your brother, older than you by 3 years. Daniel was born with severe autism and intellectual disabilities. Back then, in the 70s, we didn't know what to do. Your father and I, we were young, overwhelmed. The doctors said he'd never live a normal life, that he'd be a burden. So we placed him in Pine Ridge when he was 8. We told everyone he had died in a car accident. It was easier that way. For you, for us. Sarah staggered back, the letters fluttering to the floor like fallen leaves. "Easier? You lied to me my whole life. I grew up thinking I was an only child. And Daniel, he's alive, all these letters. He was writing to you, begging to see you." Tom, who had been downstairs fixing a leaky faucet, heard the commotion and rushed up. He found Sarah in tears, clutching a bundle of envelopes and Margaret looking like a ghost. "What's going on?" he demanded. Sarah thrust a letter at him. "My mother has been hiding a brother from me for over 40 years. Daniel. He's in some institution, and she's ignored him all this time." Tom read the letter, his face hardening. "Margaret, how could you? This is unforgivable." Margaret's voice was a whisper. "I thought I was protecting Sarah, giving her a normal childhood. Daniel was difficult, violent sometimes. He needed constant care. We couldn't afford it, and Robert, he couldn't handle it. We visited at first, but then it hurt too much, so we stopped. The letters kept coming, but I couldn't face them. I hid them away." Sarah shook her head, her voice breaking. "Protecting me? You robbed me of a brother, and him. God, what about him? Alone in that place, wondering why his family abandoned him." She gathered the letters into her arms, holding them close. "Tom and I are going there tomorrow. We're finding Daniel." Tom nodded solemnly. "And Margaret, you stay here. I don't think Sarah wants you anywhere near this until we figure out the truth." They left the attic, the door slamming behind them. Margaret was left alone amid the chaos of opened boxes, the air heavy with the scent of old paper and betrayal. She didn't move for hours, staring at the scattered letters. That night, sleep evaded her. She wandered the house, memories flooding back like a tidal wave. Daniel as a toddler, his laughter echoing through the halls before the diagnoses came. The fights with Robert about what to do. The day they drove him to Pine Ridge, his small hand clutching hers until the nurses pried him away. She had cried then, but buried it deep, building a new life on the foundation of that lie. In the kitchen at dawn, she brewed tea with unsteady hands, spilling hot water across the counter. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum. Sarah had been her pride, her perfect child. The one who excelled in school, married well, built a career. But now that perfection was shattered, revealing the rot beneath. The phone rang at 8 a.m. It was Sarah, her tone clipped. "We're heading to Pine Ridge now. Just so you know, I'm not dropping this. Daniel deserves better." Margaret stammered, "Sarah, please, let me explain." "No explanations," Sarah interrupted. "You've had 40 years for that." Click. Margaret paced the empty rooms, her mind racing. She entered Sarah's old bedroom, filled with trophies and diplomas. Then the guest room, sterile and unused. Finally, she approached the door at the end of the hall, Daniel's room. Locked for decades, the key hidden in her jewelry box. With a deep breath, she retrieved it and turned the handle. The room was a time capsule. Blue walls faded to gray, a twin bed with a spaceship comforter, posters of dinosaurs curling at the edges. On the shelf, toy cars gathered dust. She sat on the bed, the springs creaking, and picked up a photo album from the nightstand. Flipping through, she saw Daniel's smiling face, gap-toothed grins, birthday cakes, family outings before everything changed. Tears blurred her vision. "What have I done?" she whispered. Hours later, another call came from an unknown number. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Detective Alina Ramirez. Your daughter Sarah hired me to look into Daniel Hayes. I have information." Margaret's heart pounded. "Is he alive?" "Yes, ma'am. He's 48 now, still at Pine Ridge. Stable physically, but his mental health. Well, it's been a long road." "No visitors until today. Your daughter and son-in-law stopped by. Records show he tried contacting you repeatedly. Calls, letters, even drawings sent back unopened." Margaret collapsed into a chair. I couldn't face it." The detective's voice softened slightly. "Ma'am, he never stopped hopping. That's what the staff said." She hung up, sobs racking her body. For the first time in years, she allowed the grief to consume her. No more walls, no more pretense. At sunset, Sarah and Tom returned. Their faces were etched with exhaustion and sorrow. "We met him," Sarah said, standing in the doorway. "Daniel, he's kind, Mom, quiet, but his eyes light up when he talks about birds. He has a collection of feathers, and you know what he asked? If Mommy was coming soon, after all this time." Tom added, "His room is sparse. A bed, a chair, a window overlooking the woods. He says the trees remind him of home, but he's never left, Margaret. Never had a job, friends, a life outside those walls, because you left him there." Margaret tried to speak. "I didn't know." Sarah cut her off. "You did know. You chose to ignore it for your perfect little world." "What do you want from me?" Margaret pleaded. Sarah's eyes were steel. "Tomorrow, you're coming with us. You're going to look him in the eye and apologize. Then we're getting him out. Therapy, a home, whatever it takes. He deserves a chance." Margaret nodded, defeated. That night, she lay awake, rehearsing words that felt hollow. How do you apologize for a lifetime stolen? The next morning, Sarah arrived alone. "Tom couldn't stomach it," she said flatly. The drive to Pine Ridge was silent, the countryside blurring past. Margaret's hands twisted in her lap. The facility was a sprawling complex of low buildings surrounded by manicured grounds. A nurse led them to Daniel's room. He sat by the window, a slight man with graying hair and gentle eyes that widened at the sight of Margaret. "Mommy," he said softly, his voice childlike. Margaret approached, tears streaming. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I should have come sooner." He tilted his head. "You came now. That's good. Want to see my birds?" Sarah watched, her anger softening to pity. As Daniel showed his feather collection, stories poured out years of loneliness but also small joys, art classes, garden walks. Margaret listened, heartbroken. Over the following months, they worked tirelessly. Daniel was discharged into a supported living home. Sarah helped him adjust, teaching him simple tasks, introducing him to the world. Margaret visited daily, mending what she could. It wasn't perfect. Resentments lingered, trust rebuilt slowly. But for the first time, the family was whole. In the end, the secret that had poisoned Margaret's life became the catalyst for redemption. Daniel's laughter filled the old house once more, a reminder that it's never too late to face the shadows and step into the light. Shadows of redemption. In the quiet suburbs of Willow Creek, where the autumn leaves painted the streets in shades of crimson and gold, Eleanor Hayes lived a life of carefully constructed solitude. At 72, she was a widow, her days filled with tending to her small garden, reading faded novels, and avoiding the ghosts that lingered in the corners of her mind. Her husband, Robert, had passed away 5 years earlier from a sudden heart attack, leaving her alone in their modest two-story home. But it wasn't Robert's absence that haunted her most. It was the memory of her daughter, Lydia, whom she had left behind decades ago. It all began in the turbulent year of 1982. Eleanor was a young mother then, overwhelmed by the demands of life. Her husband worked long hours at the factory, and their only child, Lydia, then 14, had begun showing signs of deep emotional turmoil. What started as moody silences escalated into bouts of uncontrollable sobbing, withdrawal from school, and episodes where she would stare blankly at the walls for hours. The doctors diagnosed it as severe bipolar disorder, complicated by what they called adolescent schizophrenia tendencies. In those days, mental health was a taboo subject, whispered about in hushed tones, and resources were scarce for families like the Hayes. Eleanor, exhausted and frightened, made the decision that would define her life. She admitted Lydia to the Evergreen Sanctuary, a sprawling facility on the outskirts of town, promising herself it was temporary, a place where experts could fix her daughter while Eleanor regrouped. But weeks turned into months and months into years. Visits became sporadic, then non-existent. Letters from Lydia arrived at first, pleading and tear-stained, but Eleanor couldn't bear to read them. She convinced herself that Lydia was better off there, safe from the chaos of the outside world. Robert, ever the stoic provider, supported her silence, burying his own guilt in work. They never had more children. The wound was too deep. Now, in 2025, Eleanor's quiet existence was shattered by the arrival of her niece, Sophia. Sophia was Robert's sister's daughter, a sharp-witted lawyer in her 40s, who had recently moved back to Willow Creek after a divorce. She had always been the family peacemaker, the one who remembered birthdays and sent holiday cards. But this visit was different. Sophia showed up unannounced one rainy afternoon, her face etched with determination. "Aunt Ellie," she said, using the nickname that made Eleanor flinch, "we need to talk about Lydia." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't heard her daughter's name spoken aloud in years. "Sophia, please, that's in the past." "No, it's not," Sophia replied firmly, setting down a folder on the kitchen table. "I've been researching. Evergreen Sanctuary is still there and Lydia is still a resident. 43 years, Aunt Ellie. She's 57 now. And from what I've gathered, she's stable, has been for decades. We can get her out." Eleanor felt the room spin. She clutched the edge of the counter, memories flooding back. Lydia's wide blue eyes, her infectious laugh before the darkness set in, the way she used to draw intricate patterns on foggy windows. I can't. What would I even say to her?" Sophia placed a hand on her aunt's arm. "You'll say you're sorry. You'll say you want to make it right. And if you don't, I'll go alone. But she deserves better than to rot in that place because of old mistakes." The drive to Evergreen Sanctuary took an hour, winding through foggy hills and past forgotten farmlands. The building loomed like a relic from another era. Gray stone walls softened by ivy, arched windows with subtle security grills, and manicured lawns dotted with flower beds. It looked more like a countryside retreat than an institution, but Eleanor knew better. Institutions like this were prisons disguised as havens, where the unwanted were tucked away. Sophia parked the car and turned to her aunt. "Listen, Aunt Ellie, When we go in, you have to be real with her. No sugarcoating, no excuses about how hard life was. If you can't handle that, stay here. I'll handle the paperwork myself." Alina nodded, her throat tight. They stepped out into the crisp air, the scent of pine mingling with distant rain. A receptionist with a warm but practiced smile greeted them at the entrance. "You must be here for Lydia Hayes. We've been expecting you, your niece called ahead." The word family hung unspoken in the air, a bitter irony. Were they family after all this time? Alina followed Sophia down sterile hallways lined with motivational posters and potted plants. The air smelled of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables, a reminder that this was no home. They emerged into a sunlit courtyard where patients wandered or sat in quiet contemplation. There, under a large oak tree, sat Lydia. She was knitting something, a scarf, perhaps, her movements deliberate and rhythmic. Her hair, once a vibrant auburn like Alina's, was now streaked with silver, pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a soft sweater and loose pants, her face lined but serene. Sophia approached first. "Lydia, hi, it's Sophia, remember me, your cousin." Lydia looked up, her blue eyes focusing slowly. A faint smile crossed her lips. "Sophia, you were little last time, you liked my drawings." Her voice was soft, measured, as if each word was chosen with care. No accusation, just observation. It stung Alina more than anger ever could. Sophia gestured for Alina to come closer. Alina's legs felt like lead as she stepped forward. "Lydia, it's me, your mother." Lydia tilted her head, studying her. "Mother, you look different, older." She paused, then added matter-of-factly, "You didn't come before." The simplicity of it broke something inside Alina. Tears welled up as she sat on the bench opposite her daughter. "No, I didn't. And I'm so sorry, Lydia. I was scared. I thought this place would help you more than I could." Lydia set down her knitting needles. "It did help sometimes. The doctors gave me pills for the bad days, the ones where the world felt too loud." She glanced at the tree above them. "I like the leaves here. They change colors. Do they change where you live?" Alina wiped her eyes. "Yes, they do. Lydia, we want to take you home, out of here. You don't have to stay anymore." Lydia's brow furrowed. "Home, but this is home now. I have my room. I have art class on Tuesdays. Mr. Jenkins teaches us to paint birds." She looked at Sophia. "Will there be birds outside?" Sophia smiled gently. "Plenty of birds, and a garden like the one here, but bigger. You can paint whatever you want." They talked for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. Lydia shared snippets of her life, the friends she'd made among the residents, the holidays marked by group activities, the quiet acceptance that had replaced her early despair. She spoke of the years she waited for visits that never came, how she stopped writing letters when the replies dried up. "Crying didn't bring anyone," she said simply, "so I drew instead." Alina's guilt was a tidal wave. She excused herself briefly, stepping away to compose herself under a nearby arbor. Sophia joined her. "See what we've done, what you and Uncle Robert let happen. She's adapted, but at what cost?" "How do we fix this?" Alina whispered. "Is it even possible?" Sophia sighed. "We can't erase the past, but we can change the future. Start by getting her evaluated for release. I'll handle the legal side, guardianship, insurance, all of it." They returned to Lydia, who had resumed knitting. Alina took her daughter's hand. It was warm, calloused from years of crafts. "Lydia, I was wrong to leave you here. I want to make a family again. Will you come with us?" Lydia considered, then nodded slowly. "If I can bring my paints and see the real birds." The process began that afternoon in the director's office. Dr. Miriam Patel, a compassionate woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed Lydia's file. "Admitted at 14 for bipolar disorder with psychotic features," she read aloud. "Early progress was promising. Medication stabilized her moods by year 3. We recommended discharge multiple times in the 90s, but there was no family follow-up." Alina felt the weight of those words. "I ignored it all," she admitted, voice breaking. "I was ashamed, afraid." Dr. Patel leaned back. "Lydia has thrived in structure here. She's independent in daily tasks, participates in therapy, and her episodes are rare and manageable with meds. But she could have lived independently years ago with support. She outlined the steps: a full psychiatric assessment, 2 weeks, a transition plan including housing, therapy, and social services. Sophia took notes furiously, already planning to convert her guest room into Lydia's space. Over the next weeks, Eleanor visited daily. At first, the conversations were awkward, Lydia recounting institutional routines, Eleanor sharing mundane details of her life. But gradually, bonds reformed. Lydia showed Eleanor her artwork, vibrant watercolors of imagined landscapes, birds in flight, and abstract swirls representing her loud days. Eleanor brought photos of the old house, stories of Robert's quirks, and promises of outings to parks and museums. One day, during a supervised walk in the sanctuary's grounds, Lydia opened up more. "I remember the day you left me here. You said it'd be short, like a vacation." Her tone held no blame, but the fact pierced Eleanor. "I lied to myself," Eleanor confessed. "I was overwhelmed, but that's no excuse." Lydia stopped by a flower bed. Flowers grow back after winter. Maybe people do too. The evaluation confirmed what Dr. Patel suspected. Lydia was ready for discharge with outpatient care. Sophia handled the bureaucracy, securing Medicaid coverage, arranging therapy sessions, even enrolling Lydia in community art classes. The day of release arrived on a sunny morning in late fall. Lydia emerged from the sanctuary with a small suitcase of belongings, clothes, paints, and a stack of drawings. She hugged the nurses goodbye, promising to send postcards. At Eleanor's home, Lydia marveled at the space. "It's big and quiet." She chose a sunny room overlooking the garden where she set up her easel. The first weeks were challenging. Lydia struggled with the noise of traffic, the freedom of choices like what to eat for dinner. There were setbacks, a panic attack during a grocery trip, nights where old memories resurfaced. But Eleanor was there, patient for the first time, cooking Lydia's favorite meals from childhood, listening without judgment. Sophia visited often, becoming the bridge between them. Together, they explored Willow Creek, picnics by the lake, visits to art galleries, even a trip to the zoo to see real birds. Lydia's art flourished. She sold a few pieces at a local fair, her confidence blooming like the flowers she loved. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lydia turned to her mother. "I'm glad you came back, even late." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "Me too, my girl, me too." Years passed, and while the scars of abandonment never fully healed, they faded into something manageable. Lydia found a part-time job at an art supply store, made friends in her classes, and even started dating a kind widower from the community center. Eleanor, in turn, found purpose in advocacy, volunteering at mental health support groups, sharing her story to help others avoid her mistakes. In the end, redemption wasn't a grand gesture but a series of small ones: shared meals, laughter over old photos, the quiet assurance of presence. The shadows of the past lingered, but in the light of their rebuilt family, they no longer defined them. Willow Creek, once a place of isolation, became a haven of second chances. Echoes of forgotten promises. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where maple trees lined the streets and houses whispered secrets of happier times, lived Eleanor Hayes. At 68, she was a widow, her days filled with the monotonous rhythm of knitting scarves no one would wear and staring at faded photographs on her mantel. The largest photo was of a family from long ago: Eleanor, her late husband Robert, their son Daniel, and their daughter Clara. Clara, with her wide blue eyes and curly blonde hair, smiled brightly in that picture, frozen at age 7. But Clara hadn't smiled like that in decades, not since the day Eleanor and Robert had driven her to Willowbrook Residential Center and left her there. It was 1985 when it happened. Clara had been diagnosed with severe autism and intellectual disabilities after a series of violent meltdowns at school. Doctors called it profound developmental delay, recommending institutionalization as the best option. "She'll get the care she needs," they said. "You can't handle this at home." Eleanor, overwhelmed by Clara's unpredictable behaviors, the screaming fits, the self-harm, the nights without sleep, had agreed. Robert, a stern factory worker, had nodded solemnly, signing the papers without a word. Daniel, only 5 at the time, had clung to his mother's skirt, asking why his sister couldn't come home. "She's going to a special school," Eleanor had lied, her voice cracking. They visited at first. Every Sunday, they'd bring toys and candy, watching Clara rock back and forth in the sterile playroom. But the visits grew shorter, the excuses longer. Work demands, Daniel's soccer games, financial strains. By the time Clara turned 10, the visits had dwindled to holidays, then birthdays, then nothing. Letters from the center arrived, updates on Clara's progress, requests for family involvement, but Eleanor stuffed them into a drawer, unopened. Robert died of a heart attack in 1995, and Eleanor buried her guilt deeper, convincing herself that Clara was better off without them. Daniel, now grown, had moved across the state, building his own life. He rarely mentioned his sister, as if she'd been a dream that faded. But dreams have a way of resurfacing. It started with a phone call on a rainy April morning in 2020. Daniel's voice was steady but edged with urgency. "Mom, I found Clara. I'm going to get her out." Eleanor froze, the receiver trembling in her hand. "What do you mean, get her out? She's where she belongs." "No, Mom, she's not. I've been researching. Willowbrook isn't a prison, it's a care facility. With the right support, she can live independently, or at least with family. I'm her brother. I should have done this years ago." Daniel, now 40, was a successful architect in Seattle, married to Sophia, a compassionate social worker. They'd been trying for kids but faced infertility issues, which had prompted Daniel to reflect on his own fragmented family. A Google search for Clara's name had led him to Willowbrook's records. He'd visited alone first, shocked to find his sister, now 42, still there, her world confined to routines of group activities and supervised walks. She remembered him vaguely, calling him Danny Boy, a nickname from childhood. That visit had ignited something in him, regret, determination, a fierce protectiveness. Eleanor protested. "Daniel, you don't understand. She's difficult. What about her behaviors, the meltdowns?" "That's why facilities like this exist, Mom. But times have changed. There are therapies, medications, community programs. Sophia knows people in the field. We're doing this." Reluctantly, Eleanor agreed to join him on the next visit. The drive to Willowbrook was 3 hours of tense silence, the highway blurring through Eleanor's tear-streaked window. When they arrived, the center loomed like a forgotten relic, gray buildings surrounded by chain-link fences, softened only by overgrown gardens. Dr. Lydia Grant, the director, met them in her office, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp glasses and a clipboard. "Clara Hayes," Dr. Grant said, flipping through files. "She's been with us since '85. Stable condition, no major incidents in years. She participates in art therapy, loves puzzles, but family reintegration, that's a big step. We'll need evaluations, psychological, medical, and a guardian." Daniel leaned forward. "I'll be her guardian. My wife Sophia and I have a spare room. We'll handle everything." Dr. Grant eyed Eleanor. "And you, Mrs. Hayes, what's your involvement?" Eleanor's throat tightened. She hadn't seen Clara in over 30 years. I'll support however I can." The director nodded skeptically. "Clara will need therapy to adjust. The world outside is noisy, fast-paced. She's adapted to structure here. Sudden changes could trigger regressions." They moved to the garden, where Clara sat on a wooden bench, assembling a jigsaw puzzle of a serene lake. She was plump now, her once curly hair straight and graying, pulled into a ponytail. Her movements were deliberate, almost mechanical. A nurse, Maria, a warm Latina woman in her 40s with a gentle laugh, sat nearby, offering encouragement. "Clara, your family is here," Maria said, standing. "This is your brother Daniel and your mom." Clara looked up, her eyes widening. "Danny boy, you came back." Daniel knelt, his voice choking. "Yeah, sis, I came back, and I'm not leaving without you this time." Eleanor hovered behind, her heart pounding. Clara glanced at her, tilting her head. "Mommy, you look old." The words stung, but Eleanor forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, we all got older. I'm sorry it's been so long." Clara returned to her puzzle, fitting a piece with a satisfying click. "Puzzle is lake, calm, no waves." Maria smiled. "Clara loves puzzles. They help her focus. She's one of the kindest residents, always shares her snacks." Over the next hour, Daniel talked animatedly about his home. The backyard with flowers, the quiet neighborhood, the puzzles they'd do together. Clara listened, occasionally repeating phrases like backyard flowers with a nod. Elena watched in silence, guilt gnawing at her. How had she let this happen? Clara's simple joy in a puzzle piece highlighted the life Elena had denied her, a life of family dinners, holidays, everyday wonders. As they left, Clara waved awkwardly. "Come tomorrow, puzzle not done." "We'll come," Daniel promised. In the car, Daniel's grip on the wheel tightened. "She remembers us, Mom, after all this time. How could we just leave her?" Elena whispered, "I thought it was best, your father and I, we were scared." "Scared, she was a kid, we were her family." His voice softened. "But we're fixing it now, you have to be part of this for her." The visits became daily. Sophia joined on the second day, bringing a photo album of their home. "This is your room, Clara. We painted it blue, like the sky." Clara touched the photos. "Blue sky, no rain." Sophia laughed. "Sometimes rain, but we'll have umbrellas." Dr. Grant arranged therapy sessions. A psychologist, Dr. Patel, met with Clara, using pictures and simple questions to gauge her readiness. "She's anxious about change," he reported, "but resilient. With support, she'll thrive." Elena found herself opening up during these visits. One afternoon, in Clara's room, a sparse space with a twin bed, a dresser, and stacks of completed puzzles, she spotted a shoebox under the bed. "What's this?" she asked. Clara pulled it out. "My treasures." Inside were faded letters, unanswered ones Elena had sent in the early years, and a crumpled drawing of a family, stick figures holding hands. "You drew this?" Elena asked, tears welling. Clara nodded. "Family, waiting." The evaluations took 2 weeks. Medical checks confirmed Clara's physical health was good, though she needed occupational therapy for daily skills. Psychologically, she was cleared. No danger to herself or others, capable of community living with supervision. Dr. Grant delivered the news in her office. "She's ready. Sign the guardianship papers and discharge is set for Friday." Daniel signed steadily, Elena with a trembling hand. That night at Daniel and Sophia's home, a cozy 2-story with a wraparound porch they prepared. Sophia stocked the kitchen with Clara's favorite foods, applesauce, soft bread. Daniel assembled a puzzle table. Elena helped hang curtains in Clara's room, choosing patterns with lakes and trees. "She's giving us a second chance," Sophia said softly. "Don't waste it." Friday dawned bright. At Willowbrook, Clara waited by the door, clutching a suitcase of clothes and her puzzle boxes. Maria hugged her. "You're going to do great, mi amiga. Call if you need anything." Clara looked at Elena. "Mommy coming too." Elena nodded. "Every day if you'll have me." The drive home was filled with Clara's questions. "Why so many cars?" "Big trees outside," Daniel answered patiently, Sophia playing soft music to soothe her. At home, Clara explored tentatively, touching walls, opening drawers. "My room?" she asked, eyes wide at the blue walls. "Yours," Daniel confirmed. Adjustment wasn't easy. The first night, Clara had a meltdown, overwhelmed by the dishwasher's hum, rocking and crying until Sophia guided her through breathing exercises. Therapy sessions helped, twice-weekly visits from a specialist teaching coping strategies. Elena visited daily, bringing puzzles or reading stories. Slowly, bonds reformed. Clara taught Elena to assemble puzzles, their hands working side by side. One evening, months later, as autumn leaves fell, Clara sat in the backyard watching birds. "Happy here," she said unprompted. Daniel smiled. "Us too, sis." Elena, watching from the porch, felt a fragile peace. She hadn't erased the past, the lost years, the pain, but in Clara's quiet forgiveness, she found redemption. Love, she realized, wasn't about deserving. It was about showing up, day after day, piecing together what was broken. Years passed. Clara flourished, joining a day program for art and skills. She even exhibited her puzzles at a local fair. Daniel and Sophia adopted a child, and Clara became the doting aunt. Elena, in her twilight years, wrote letters, not of apology but of gratitude, to the daughter she'd reclaimed. In the end, family wasn't defined by blood or time lost, but by the promises kept when it mattered most. And in Willow Creek, under those enduring maples, the Hayes family finally found their way home. Shadows of the Forgotten. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the Willowbrook Institute, casting long shadows across the sterile hallways. It was the day we had all been waiting for, or dreading, depending on how you looked at it. I, Eleanor Thompson, arrived early with my daughter, Clara, and her husband, David. We had come to collect my long-lost son, Victor, who had spent the last 45 years behind these walls. Victor was 60 now, but in my mind, he was forever the troubled 15-year-old boy I'd turned away from all those years ago. Dr. Reynolds, the Institute's director, had advised us to come before the rush of daily activities. "Victor thrives on routine," she'd said during our last meeting. "Disruptions can unsettle him." As we pulled up to the entrance, there he was, Victor, standing tall but frail with 2 worn duffel bags at his feet. Beside him was Sophia, his primary caregiver for the past decade. Her eyes were red-rimmed, a handkerchief clutched in her hand. "This is harder than I thought," Sophia murmured, dabbing at her cheeks. "I've watched over Victor like he was my own. He's family to me." Victor shifted awkwardly, then stepped forward and enveloped her in a tentative embrace. "Thank you for the stories, Sophia, and for the puzzles when I couldn't sleep." She pulled him close one last time. "Promise you'll call if you need anything, Victor, day or night." We loaded the bags into the trunk of David's SUV. Victor glanced back at the building, his gray eyes scanning the faded brick facade, the overgrown hedges, the barred windows that had framed his world for so long. "I have more things inside," he said quietly. "My journals, 20 of them." We followed him to his room, a small, impersonal space with a single bed and a desk cluttered with notebooks filled with his writings, poems, observations, fragments of a life interrupted. Clara and David helped carry the stacks, arranging them carefully in the back seat. Victor moved with deliberate slowness, as if each step away from the Institute was a leap into the unknown. "Are you ready?" Clara asked, her voice soft. He nodded. "Yes, this was my home, but now I have a new one." Dr. Reynolds met us at the door for a final farewell. "Victor, you've been a model resident, quiet, thoughtful. The world outside is yours now." She shook his hand firmly. Then she turned to me, her gaze piercing. "Mrs. Thompson, cherish this second chance. Love isn't bound by time, but it does require effort." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing on my chest. She was right. I'd abandoned Victor out of shame and fear, hiding him away like a secret. The scars I'd left ran deep, and no amount of regret could erase them overnight. Victor climbed into the back seat, buckling himself in with meticulous care. As David started the engine, Victor pressed his face to the window, watching the Institute shrink in the rearview mirror until it vanished. "How far is your place, David?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "About an hour's drive," David replied. "We'll be there before you know it." Victor fell silent, his eyes wide as he absorbed the blur of highways, skyscrapers, and bustling streets. Billboards advertised gadgets he'd never seen. People hurried by with earbuds and smartphones, a far cry from the controlled silence of Willowbrook. This was the world he'd been exiled from, a vibrant, chaotic tapestry that had evolved without him. When we arrived at Clara and David's modest suburban home, Clara swung open the front door with a warm smile. "Welcome home, Uncle Victor." He stepped out cautiously, taking in the neatly trimmed lawn, the blooming rose bushes, the porch swing creaking in the breeze. "It's nice," he said, almost reverently. "It has colors, real colors, not just gray." Inside, the living room felt alive with family photos, cozy armchairs, and a large flat-screen TV. Victor stood frozen in the center, his hands clasped together. "So many things," he murmured. "At Willowbrook, we had rules about what we could touch." David clapped him on the back gently. "Touch anything, Victor. This is your space, too." But Victor remained still, as if the freedom was a trap waiting to spring. Clara led him to his room, a sunny spare bedroom with a queen bed, a wooden desk, and empty shelves waiting for his journals. On the wall hung one of his old poems, framed in simple oak. It was something he'd written as a teenager before everything fell apart, words about a bird trapped in a cage, yearning for the sky. Victor approached it, tracing the glass with his fingertips. This is mine. I wrote this. Yes, Clara said, her eyes misty. And this room is yours for good. Victor turned, tears glistening. Forever, not just visiting. David pulled him into a hug. Forever, Uncle, I swear it. The early days were a whirlwind of adjustments. Victor struggled with the mundane miracles of modern life. The coffee maker beeped like an alarm, the washing machine rumbled like thunder. Clara taught him patiently how to operate the remote, how to use the toaster without burning the bread, how to navigate the shower's confusing array of settings. It's like teaching a kid, she confided to me one evening, but he's so eager. He just needs time. Victor had been frozen at 15 in many ways, his knowledge of the world halted by institutional walls. Freedom terrified him as much as it thrilled him. One night, I found him in the kitchen at midnight, staring at the refrigerator's hum. Too many sounds, he explained when I asked. Cars outside, wind in the trees. At Willowbrook, lights out meant silence. Clara joined us, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. It's overwhelming, I know. Want some tea? It helps me unwind. He nodded, and as we sipped in the dim light, he whispered, Is this real? Will I wake up back there? It's real, I said, my voice cracking, and we're here for you. He paused, then added, Clara, David, thank you for finding me. I thought no one cared anymore. David squeezed his hand. We care, always have. I visited every few days, bringing groceries or books, anything to bridge the chasm I'd created. But Victor kept his distance from me. Polite nods, murmured thanks, but no warmth, no questions about my life. I was the stranger who'd left him behind, and he treated me as such. It stung, but I deserved it. One afternoon, as David mowed the lawn, I sat with Victor on the porch. He was jotting in a journal, his pen flying across the page. What are you writing? I asked tentatively. A story about a man who finds a door to a new world, he replied, not looking up. Like me. I hesitated. May I sit closer? He shrugged. Sure. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I gathered my courage. Victor, I know words can't fix what I did. Abandoning you, it was cowardice. I was ashamed, scared of judgment, but I regret it every waking moment. He set down his pen. Why didn't you visit? Was I bad? The question gutted me. No, Victor, you were perfect. It was me, my failures, my fears. I hid you away instead of fighting for you. Unforgivable. He stared at his hands. I waited, years, thought you were gone, dead maybe. Then I realized, you just didn't want me, that hurt worst. Tears streamed down my face. I'm sorry, so profoundly sorry. He sighed. I wished I was normal, like Clara, not the problem child. I took his hand. You are exactly who you should be. I failed you, but if you'll let me, I'll try to be the mother you deserved. He met my eyes like mine, deep blue and haunted. Okay, try. Dr. Lena, the therapist, arrived a week later. A kind woman in her 50s with a soothing presence, she specialized in reintegration. After her session with Victor, she sat with us. He's resilient, but he's built walls to survive isolation. Now he must dismantle them. Start small, outings, choices, routines with flexibility. We followed her advice. Breathing exercises for his panic attacks, simple tasks to build confidence, like choosing dinner menus. 2 weeks in, Clara took him to the nearby botanical garden. I tagged along. Victor marveled at the flowers, the butterflies, the winding paths. So much green, he said. Willowbrook had a yard, but this is alive. We picnicked under an oak tree. He fed breadcrumbs to sparrows, laughing as they hopped closer. They're brave, he observed, not afraid of me. On the drive home, he chattered animatedly. I want to go again, and maybe see the ocean someday. David grinned. We'll make a list. Ocean, museums, whatever you dream of. That evening, over pasta, Victor asked, How old am I really? I feel stuck at 15, but my reflection, it's an old man. Clara touched his arm. You're 60, but age is just a number. You've got time to catch up. I want to learn, he said firmly. Drive a car, read books, live. We'll help, I promised. A month passed. Victor grew bolder, venturing to the grocery store, learning to text on his new phone. Clara organized a family dinner, just us four with grilled chicken and pie. During dessert, David presented a gift, a tablet. For reading, watching shows, the world's at your fingertips. Victor held it like treasure. I can learn anything. Anything, Clara affirmed. His birthday loomed May 5th, his 61st. We'd missed so many, this one would be special. We decorated stealthily, blue balloons, a banner reading, Happy Birthday, Victor. A custom cake with vanilla layers and fresh berries. When he descended the stairs, he gasped, For me. All for you, David said, hugging him. We sang, ate, laughed. Victor blew out the candles, wishing silently. Later, as we cleaned up, he confided, This is the first real party I've had. Thank you. Over the next months, progress ebbed and flowed. Setbacks came. A noisy storm triggered a meltdown. Crowds at a fair overwhelmed him. But triumphs shone brighter. Victor's first solo walk around the block, his enrollment in an online writing class, a tentative reconciliation with me through shared stories of his childhood. One crisp autumn day, we drove to the ocean. Victor stood at the shore, waves lapping his feet, the horizon endless. This is freedom, he said, tears mixing with sea spray. I belong here. And in that moment, watching my son reclaim his world, I knew we'd all found a way forward. Not perfect, but whole. Family at last. Shadows of the forgotten. It was a crisp autumn morning in 1962 when Alina Hayes made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Her daughter, Amelia, was only 12 years old, a bright-eyed girl with a wild imagination and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. But Amelia was different. She saw things others didn't, shadows that whispered secrets, colors that danced in the air without reason. The doctors called it schizophrenia, a word that sounded like a curse to Alina. In those days, mental illness was a stigma, a family shame whispered behind closed doors. Alina's husband, Thomas, had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, leaving her alone with Amelia and her younger son, Benjamin, who was just 8. Benjamin was normal, as Alina often reminded herself, active, outgoing, the kind of boy who made friends easily and never caused trouble. Amelia, on the other hand, had episodes, screaming at invisible tormentors, drawing frantic pictures of monsters that she swore were real. The neighbors talked. Alina's job at the local library was at risk. I can't do this anymore, she confessed to her sister one night over tea. She's pulling us all under. The Willow Creek Sanitarium was a sprawling estate on the outskirts of town, with manicured lawns and iron gates that promised safety and care. Alina drove Amelia there on a rainy afternoon, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. Amelia clutched her favorite sketchbook, filled with vibrant drawings of imaginary worlds. "Mommy, why are we going away?" she asked, her voice small and confused. "It's just for a little while, sweetheart," Alina lied, her throat tight. "To help you feel better." She signed the papers with a numb hand, watching as nurses in starched uniforms led Amelia away. The girl's last look back, wide eyes full of betrayal, seared into Alina's memory like a brand. For the first 40 years, Alina built a wall around that memory. She focused on Benjamin, who grew into a successful architect, married a kind woman named Sophie, and had 2 children of his own. Alina remarried briefly to a quiet accountant named Harold, but the marriage crumbled under the weight of her unspoken guilt. She volunteered at church, tended her garden, and convinced herself that Amelia was better off at Willow Creek. Visits. She made a few in the beginning, but each one was torture. Amelia's accusations, her pleas to come home. Eventually, the visits stopped. Letters arrived sporadically, filled with Amelia's drawings and fragmented thoughts, but Alina tucked them away in a drawer, unopened. Benjamin knew about his sister, of course. As a child, he'd asked why Amelia never came home. "She's sick, Ben," Alina would say, changing the subject. As an adult, he pressed harder. "Mom, we should bring her back. Medicine has changed. There are treatments now." But Alina resisted. "It's too late," she'd snap. "She's institutionalized. She wouldn't know how to live out here." The turning point came on a sweltering July day in 2002, when Amelia turned 52. A letter arrived from Willow Creek, not from Amelia, but from Dr. Miriam Voss, the new head psychiatrist. "Dear Mrs. Hayes," it read, "due to recent policy changes and advancements in mental health care, We are reevaluating long-term patients for potential release. Amelia has shown remarkable stability with modern medications. She expresses a strong desire to reconnect with her family. We recommend a trial discharge. Eleanor stared at the letter for hours, her coffee growing cold. That night, she called Benjamin. "Your sister. She might be coming home." Benjamin didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it, Mom. We'll get her out." The release process was a whirlwind of paperwork, evaluations, and therapy sessions. Amelia emerged from Willow Creek a frail woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that still held a spark of that childhood wonder. She carried a suitcase of clothes and a portfolio bursting with drawings, decades of art created in isolation. Benjamin picked her up, Sophie by his side. "Amelia, I'm Ben, your brother." Amelia blinked, then smiled tentatively. "Benny, you grew up." They brought her to Benjamin's home in the suburbs, a cozy house with a backyard garden and rooms for the grandkids. Eleanor arrived later, her heart pounding. Amelia stood in the living room, touching the curtains as if they might vanish. "Mom," she said softly, no anger in her voice, just quiet recognition. Eleanor burst into tears. "I'm so sorry, Amelia. I was wrong. I was scared." The first weeks were a delicate dance. Amelia slept in the guest room, waking from nightmares of locked doors and echoing hallways. She marveled at simple things, the hum of a refrigerator, the freedom to walk outside without permission. Benjamin and Sophie were patient, teaching her to use a microwave, a cell phone, the bus. "Take it slow, Aunt Amelia," Sophie's daughter, Lily, said one day, handing her a crayon. At 10 years old, Lily reminded Amelia of her younger self. They drew together, colorful worlds spilling onto paper. Eleanor's visits were awkward at first. She'd bring groceries or books, sitting stiffly on the couch while Amelia sketched. "Do you hate me?" Eleanor asked one evening, her voice breaking. Amelia looked up from her drawing, a vibrant tree with roots twisting into the sky. "I did for a long time, but hatting takes too much energy. I drew instead. It kept me alive." As months passed, bonds began to form. Benjamin shared stories of their childhood, the time they built a snow fort that collapsed, burying them in laughter, the summer they chased fireflies until dawn. Amelia frowned at some. "I don't remember that. It's like parts of me are missing." Dr. Voss had warned them trauma and medication had fragmented her memories. "We'll make new ones," Benjamin promised. "Starting now." Amelia's 53rd birthday was a revelation. Sophie decorated the house with garlands and lights, baking a chocolate cake from scratch. Amelia entered the kitchen, eyes wide. "All this, for me," Benjamin hugged her. "Every year from now on." Eleanor arrived with a tray of Amelia's favorite childhood cookies, oatmeal raisin, the recipe dusted off from memory. They sang, off-key and joyful. Amelia blew out the candles in one breath, her face glowing. "I haven't had a real party since, well, forever." Gifts followed. Benjamin gave her a set of high-quality art supplies, oils, acrylics, easels, and canvases. "You were always the artist," he said. Sophie presented a journal for new sketches. Eleanor hesitated, then handed over a small locket. "This was your grandmother's. I should have given it to you years ago." Inside was a faded photo of a young Eleanor holding baby Amelia. Amelia clasped it around her neck. "It fits perfectly." That night, after the laughter faded, Amelia turned to Eleanor. "Why did you leave me there, Mom? Was I too broken?" The question hung heavy. Benjamin glanced at Eleanor, urging her on. "I was the broken one," Eleanor admitted, tears streaming. "I was grieving your father, overwhelmed, ashamed. I thought I was protecting Benjamin and myself, but I was just a coward. I failed you." Amelia nodded slowly. "I escaped into my art, too. When the days were hard, I'd paint worlds where I was free." She reached out, squeezing Eleanor's hand. "But we're here now." In the following months, Amelia blossomed. Benjamin enrolled her in community art classes where she learned digital techniques alongside traditional ones. The instructor, a gentle woman named Clara, became a mentor. "Your work has depth," Clara told her. "It's like you've lived 1,000 lives." Amelia made her first friend there, Marcus, a retired veteran who painted abstract emotions. "Coffee after class?" he asked one day. Amelia hesitated, then agreed. "I'd like that." Eleanor visited more often, cooking meals and listening to Amelia's stories from Willow Creek, not the horrors but the small kindnesses. A nurse who smuggled in extra paper, a fellow patient who taught her to knit. They walked in the park, Amelia pointing out birds and clouds that inspired her art. "I missed this," Amelia said once. "The sky without bars." One spring day, Amelia asked to visit Willow Creek. "I need to say goodbye properly." Elinor drove the familiar road stirring old ghosts. They met Dr. Voss, who embraced Amelia. "You've come so far." Amelia showed photos of her new life, paintings, family dinners, coffee with Marcus. "I'm free now," she said. Dr. Voss turned to Elinor sternly. "Cherish this second chance, not everyone gets one." Back home, Amelia was reflective. "I dreamed of leaving but never believed it. Now I have a brother, a family. It's enough." By summer, Amelia's art gained notice. Clara organized a group exhibition at a local cafe. Amelia selected pieces, ethereal landscapes, shadowy figures emerging into light. Titled Echoes of Silence, they drew a crowd. A young couple bought one for $150. "Your work speaks to me," the woman said. Amelia beamed. "It speaks for me." Therapy continued with Dr. Voss. In a family session, she addressed the scars. "Amelia's trauma lingers. Forgiveness doesn't erase it." To Benjamin, "Don't smother her with protection." They discussed independence, an apartment nearby. Amelia pondered, then agreed. "My own space, like a real person." They found a sunny studio apartment overlooking a river, perfect for painting. Moving day was bittersweet. Boxes of art supplies, a new bed, family helping. "This is mine," Amelia whispered, hanging a drawing on the wall. Elinor visited weekly, sharing coffee and conversations. "I'm happy, Mom," Amelia said one afternoon. "Art friends you all of it," Elinor wept. "I love you, always have." Amelia smiled. "Love is messy, but it's ours." A year later, Amelia's solo show opened at a gallery. Critics praised her raw, resilient vision. She sold half her pieces, donating proceeds to mental health charities. Marcus proposed over coffee. She said yes, a quiet wedding planned. Elinor, now in her 80s, found peace in the fragments. The past lingered, but today mattered. Love, she learned, demands courage, action over fear, presence over absence. In Amelia's light, the shadows faded, one brushstroke at a time.